this game is the best game I've played in a while, and that says something. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you why this game is absolute cinema, okay? No questions asked. Hello everybody, my name is Alex, or Trash Can G, and I am here to give you an in-depth, as much as I can be, analysis of the game Karma: The Dark World. So I recently just finished playing this game like a couple days ago, and I was just mind boggled by all the things that I noticed in this game. So just for reference, if you've ever not played this game, I suggest you do, but this video will contain spoilers. I'm going to give you a brief summary without spoilers of the game, and if you're interested, then either watch a playthrough or play it yourself. And then if you're ever confused and you're like, what the fuck did I just finish playing or watching, I'm here to help you with that. If I keep looking over here, I have all my notes and everything that I wrote for this game on my computer. It's not going to be stored in here. There's way too much that I want to go over, and I'm sure I did not cover. But in this video, I'm going to give you a breakdown of the story without spoilers, the story itself, which is obviously going to contain spoilers, about each of the characters and their stories, the post-credit scenes, my first impressions, and then some symbolism and things I didn't understand in the game, my interpretation of the ending, and then of course just little bits of whatever that I want to throw in at the end. If you do not agree with anything that I say, that is fine. Go ahead and put your interpretation of what you think happened or whatever in the comments, and I'd be happy to read them. This is my interpretation. This is how I viewed the game. And of course, like, you know, unless you're the game developer or you're the person that worked on the team for the game, you can all make assumptions and we can all like think we know what we know, but you know, in the end, it's just an interpretation. So without further ado, here is the summary without spoilers. So you play as this man named Daniel McGovern. He is a Thoughts Bureau agent who is said to investigate a theft crime. However, the story is a lot deeper than that, of course. It's a psychological horror game. So the Thought Bureau is a small portion of a company that's called the Leviathan Company. And Leviathan is ran by a computer AI named Mother. As you play as the character named Daniel, you do a deep dive into the suspect's memory, which basically you go into their brain via a little helmet program thing, and you look into the past to uncover what's led up to the events up until now. So that's my brief summary, very brief summary. The next part is going to be really long, and of course it's going to be the whole story with spoilers. So from here on, we will contain spoilers, so go on if you just want to have fun and understand the themes of the story. Okay, so this game is told out of order, so I'm gonna do you guys the favor and put it in chronological order. To set up the scenes and the setting of this game, we do start in 1984 East Germany, and this is like a dystopian society. As I said, it's ruled by like the Leviathan Company, and I'm not sure if it's the whole entire world or just like a portion of where they're from, but at least the area that they are in, it is controlled by Leviathan, this big company that owns basically everything. So how did this company come to be? Well, you don't learn this until the end of the game, but as I said, we're doing this in order. So there was a great war that had happened in East Germany. There was a group of scientists called the Gold Rush, 12 scientists in this group, and they got together with the Gold Rush scientists and Leviathan Corp, and eventually it ended up leading to the authorization and the progress of the AI called Mother to build the city back up from all the destruction that it had gone through. The father of this Gold Rush scientist group is this guy right here, and he is known as the professor for most of the game. and this man right here who you meet at the beginning of the game, and his name is Fred. These two people are important, so you want to remember them. So these two get together and start to study artificial intelligence, which is what led to the development of Mother and this substance called Dicey.
I'm conducting peer review of the energy absorption properties of the new substance, Dicey.
So as I had mentioned before, you play this guy right here, and his name is Daniel McGovern. So at the beginning of the game, the character you play as is sent by a group called the Thought Bureau. And who are the Thought Bureau? So the Thought Bureau is basically like an investigation unit that observes criminals via deep diving into brains. So they send agents like the character we play as, Daniel, to go into these people's brains and find out who is guilty and who is not guilty. So the first culprit you investigate in this game is named Shawn Mendes, and no, not the one that sang Stitches, this guy. So Shawn Mendes he's a researcher for a company called the Winston Company, which again, another company controlled by Leviathan Corp. So Shawn was researching this matter that I had brought up previously called Dyson. Dicey. So during one of these experiments, he ends up staying after hours at work, which is illegal. If you stay after a certain hour, you could be punished by Leviathan Corp, either getting fired or just going to prison. But despite this, he got stuck in his work, and while he's there after hours, he sees two individuals, a man and a woman, and the man is the professor, as we brought up earlier, and the woman, we will get to her soon, okay? So while listening in on their conversation, he uses a tape recorder to document everything he's hearing about what they're working on. So the two of them are experimenting on someone or something called Lucas, which they're using the Dicey to keep him alive. And aside from the Dicey, he's also eating human bodies. Yeah. So everybody in this world has like tiers of what level citizen they are. So the higher job you have, the bigger, better citizen you are, right? So Shawn, a bit on the lower end, but he is a scientist, so he's got some privilege. He sees these people with a little bit more higher access than he does, and he decides to record everything that he hears on a tape recorder. And he thinks that sending this to the Thought Bureau to turn them in for doing something illegal, thinking that this would lead to a promotion and for him to get better benefits for his family. However, this majorly backfires on him, and while he follows the lady into the lab where Lucas is being held, he sees this and he freaks out, because of course who wouldn't freak out if they saw this? And he is then attacked and he loses his leg. Yeah, Lucas wanted a little snack. So this woman, as I said from earlier, her name is Rachel, and she's actually going to be one of the more prominent characters as we finish Shawn's story in this. So Rachel ends up helping Shawn. Helping, I'm putting in quotes, you'll see why. And she decides to tell the professor, hey, we were caught. And the professor basically tells her to get the tape recorder and kick him out, right? So that's what she does. So now Shawn, without proof of the crime that he witnessed and him being a lower class worker, and since Shawn was working after hours and he lost a limb, he of course had to recover and he couldn't go to work, so they demoted him into a desk job and basically said, oh, your recovery time, that's not really our fault, so you've basically been absent for work, so we're gonna give you a desk job because we still appreciate you very much. Thanks, Leviathan. So this demotion gives him a lot less benefits, and this causes him to have tension in his family. So his wife ends up leaving him and it's just him and his daughter. And so due to this, he goes through a bunch of mental stress and He works longer hours, he works more days with no time off, like at all. And he starts making a lot less money, so he resorts to stealing Daisai and selling it to people to get more money for his kid, because now he's the only one to support her. And total side note, to say how bad they are treated in this company, the people that are going through mental distress are given this drink, and it's called the blue bottle drink. And basically it's a drug to improve work performance and also to maintain some kind of brainwashing in their employees. So there's some notes that you find around in the game that basically people are having hallucinations, they're freaking out, and they're depressed, but then as soon as they take this drink, it's just work, 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 work. They're brainwashing them. So as I said, Sean ends up stealing company property and medicines to sell just to make ends meet for him and his daughter. And this is where us, the player as Daniel, comes in, and we are investigating this, right? So while we play as Daniel, we first, before we investigate him, go to Sean's workplace and we find a bottle of Daisai in his desk, which is what he got reported for at the Thought Bureau. He got reported for stealing Daisai. Everything that I just mentioned before is what leads up to Daniel finding out that Sean, you know, he's not a bad guy, but we work for a company and we gotta rat him out, right? And later towards the investigation, when Sean is kind of not trusting Daniel, Daniel sympathizes with him for his memories, and Sean decides to ask, hey, I'll tell you the truth, you can see all my memories, which is everything that I just explained. That's in exchange for keeping his daughter safe. His daughter, now, she doesn't have a mom anymore, and Sean, at the end of the investigation, dies. So I am not 100% sure what happens with the daughter. There is a moment where you see her in her room and she writes a letter saying that she's been home by herself for 3 days and she's hungry. So do with that information what you will. I would like to believe that she's not dead, but that's just me. And Daniel ends up agreeing, sends the Thought Bureau to go help Sean's daughter. So in exchange for this, Sean gives Daniel access to all of his memories. So now we're gonna move on to Rachel's story. So Rachel was the one that got caught feeding Lucas dead bodies by Sean. So what is her part in all this, aside from getting caught doing something she's probably not supposed to be doing with Daisai as a researcher? So let's go back again in order and I'll tell you her backstory and we will connect it to the plot as we go along. So her story is a little bit upsetting, and I will say that there's a little bit of a trigger warning there, and if anybody is sensitive to this kind of information, I'd say skip to this part and I should be done talking about that. But if not, then let us continue. Okay, so Rachel grew up in a home where her father is a military veteran of the war that I had set this whole thing up with. But he does not receive compensation or benefits for this war because Leviathan only cares about the people that work for them. So basically, Rachel and her family live in a rundown area, and Rachel's parents decide the best way to make money is from selling their child to rich men.
I can't be free. Even my body doesn't belong to me. Why must it be like this? You're all blood-sucking monsters.
So during this tragic time of her life, the Winston Company decides to hire Rachel because despite what she is doing currently, she's a very intelligent child. But however, we do see that her parents are trying to keep her away from that.
Institute. We've sent many letters to your home address, but have yet to receive a response. Should we take it to mean that you decline our offer?
And they end up hiding her letters. so she's not able to work for the company. But then eventually she is able to receive one of these messages and she starts to work under the professor. So her research at the beginning with the professor includes animal testing, and yeah, it's basically they're using Dasein on creatures to see how it improves or what it does to them, right? Science. But she decides not to question these practices because like any life is better than what she had come from. So after a while of working at the company, or working with the company, she meets Lucas. And yes, Lucas, this thing right here, but you know, before that he was a human being. So while she meets the love of her life, he is also somebody that works at the Winston company as botanist. So she ends up having a little bit of trouble connecting with Lucas because of her past and how she was treated, but eventually the two get together and they are going to get married, right? But you'd think happy ending for her, right? Yeah, no. So Lucas, with the intention of marrying her, decides to invite her parents to the wedding. Her father ends up, let's just say, pew-pewing. He doesn't make the cut, okay, Lucas? Because they're a little bit mad that he took away their income. So Rachel, feeling guilty about her parents doing this to her lover, ends up deciding to try to keep him alive, and she talks with the professor and ends up offering Lucas as an experiment. Don't know if that was any better of her to do, but she did it. So that is what causes Lucas to end up being this scary monster that he becomes. But despite his appearance, Rachel does think that he is still in there and his soul and his brain are still in there.
Professor, I can sense him. I know there's still a part of him suffering in that body.
She's like, he's a man-eating monster. He's causing problems, but I think he's still in there. So she goes to the professor and gives him a proposition of, I'll help you do whatever you want if you transfer his subconscious into mine, just so I can be with him for one last time. And so the professor reluctantly agrees to this, but he says, okay, if I'm gonna do you this favor, you're gonna do me a favor. And the favor is, drum roll guys, this is where everything starts to connect. The favor is to go to Shawn Mendes' desk and put in a bottle of Dasein and the previously taken away tape recorder. So that is what we find at the beginning of the game as Daniel McGovern. He also tells her, hey, you're going to be found out in Shawn's memories and you're also going to be found out from the tape recorder. So just turn yourself into the thought bureau, and while your mind is getting, you know, whatever, I will put Lucas in there. He specifically tells her that Daniel is going to be the one in charge of her case. So now we can connect to what does Daniel have to do with this. So diving into Daniel's character, Daniel had been working with the Leviathan Corp for years, working as a thought bureau agent and doing these brain dives for them. So all of Daniel's investigation was everything that we've covered up until now, but it shows as he is going through their memories, he somehow starts to see in Rachel's memories something that applies to him, and he starts unlocking memories that he doesn't even remember having. So during Rachel's brain dive, Rachel was instructed by the professor to trigger some of these hidden memories that Daniel might have. So after the brain dive with Rachel, she doesn't make it either. So Daniel, now having more questions than answers, he decides to go investigate on his own without authorization from Mother or the company. Now he's just like, what is going on and what is my part in this? So during this investigation, he ends up deciphering that this was all one big plot setup to get Daniel to do exactly what he's doing, which is investigating the man from the very beginning. So Daniel ends up seeing the professor and Ted in Rachel's memory, and since he doesn't know who the professor is yet, he just goes to investigate Ted. So eventually this leads up to Daniel finding out that Ted is dead. He walks in the room and he's dead. I don't know what to tell you. And who he does end up finding is the professor. We end up learning from the professor himself that he is Professor McGovern. Who is Professor McGovern? Daniel's dad. It's not like they looked exactly the same this whole time. So we find out from the professor talking to Daniel that he had a sister, which was completely wiped from Daniel's memories. And the two of them, him and his sister, were exposed to Dysine since his father was a researcher. This, however, leads Lisa to develop some kind of like powers, you know, like she can move shit around, she can make things explode. I don't know, but she's got powers. And Daniel's dad ends up telling him the only thing that's holding back her true powers is Daniel himself. Daniel then starts uncovering all his memories since his dad is helping him remember these things. And he ends up telling Daniel that Leviathan is actively probing his brain, which is causing his memories to break down, because the secret that he's been keeping about his sister is actively making his brain scramble, essentially. So Daniel then remembers that his mother was killed by Leviathan and his sister and him were taken from his dad, and they put Daniel under their control. After Professor McGovern loses his whole family, he ends up somehow doing some mind control on Fred, because Fred ultimately betrayed him and was the one who ratted out his kid's superpowers to Leviathan.
This place smells so bad.
And of course, Leviathan wants to maintain control over all these things, so of course they want more power. Leviathan ends up capturing Daniel, trying to figure out what this secret is to controlling Lisa's powers. So Professor McGovern ends up telling Daniel that it is his goal to keep Leviathan from finding out Lisa, his sister's secret, and that Daniel's existence is the only thing that's keeping her powers at bay. Professor McGovern ends up telling Daniel the only way to keep out Leviathan from finding out this secret is that he implemented a virus that kills these people trying to get in his mind. And the only way to activate this virus is to kill the professor. So Daniel is forced to kill his dad and keep that secret in his mind. Since we now know about Lisa, she ends up appearing in Daniel's subconscious, and you realize that this whole time you weren't really Daniel. You assume you're Daniel because you're trying to reclaim these memories, but you are actually a Leviathan worker that they cloned of Daniel, trying to get his memories back. And that's where we see Daniel as an older version of himself, and he has lost all his memories and everything is crumbling around him due to the pressure of keeping this secret.
Oh, gone.
Daniel?
Do you know who I am? Can you help me look at this?
Hi, Daniel.
Do you know my parents? They're in this photo. But I can no longer see them clearly. Mutter, Otiet, Mum? I think my mother is calling me. She's calling me to dinner. Do you hear?
Oh, my little brother.
Dad. Dad, I failed to protect her. I didn't keep my promise in this endless eternity. I am the protector of this crumbling castle. The sand is my memories. The castle, ravaged by the waves, is the secret I have guarded all my life. I'm trapped here forever. I will be completely forgotten. Father!
You've done very well, little brother. You've done very well.
But the castle... I want to see the secret again. I will never see it again.
My little brother, trust me, you will see it again, because I'm here with you.
Lisa. Why did you take so long to find me?
This is editing Alex, and if it tells you anything, I played that whole scene and I sobbed. Okay? While editing it. When I played the game, I sobbed. It's a beautiful game, despite any plot holes. It's a beautiful game. Okay? I hope you guys appreciated that scene as much as I did. And that's essentially when we find out that he's a spectator, and every time he sends a copy into his brain, he is just sending Leviathan workers to go unlock his memories, but most of them fail, except for this one time that we play as the copy. And now that we've found out Lisa and Daniel's family's secret, we as the Leviathan copy have finally succeeded in finding out the secret to Lisa's powers. But by the end, real Daniel ends up reuniting with his sister, getting his memories back, and he is now free from keeping this secret. And meaning free as in Daniel dies. So, post-credit scene. So in the post-credit, we do see Daniel in his real body in a bathtub filled with the Dyson, and he sheds a tear. Finally, he is able to be happy. He no longer has this pressure on him. So with Daniel's death now confirmed, Lisa shows up in a prison cell and she disappears, meaning Lisa's powers are now fully activated. So now that I've explained the plot, the rest of this video is just going to be symbolism and interpretations and looking into the smaller details of the game that I didn't mention in the plot. So if you guys have any other theories or comments or view on this game, please let me know, because like, oh my god, I love talking about stuff like this. I have a degree in English and I have not been able to use it, so looking at literary elements in a video game is what's keeping me alive right now. But again, disclaimer, this is my personal views of this game. I could be wrong, and that's okay. Okay, so my first impressions. Ooh, okay, so the visuals are stunning, and I'm sure I have put in plenty of clips in this video so that you could see just how beautiful this game is. And I need to say this is an indie game. This is an individual developer game. You know, for $15 game or $15 to $34 game depending on what version you get. This is beautiful. I was gagged. Like, wow, the setting, the story, the characters, and just like, oh my god, the symbolism. When I'm gonna get into the symbolism, bro, I ate that shit up. Okay, so the very first thing that I need to bring up, the heads of the people, they are TV screens. Okay, you might think, oh, it's just like an aesthetic thing, or it's a setting thing, or whatever. It's just to make it more futuristic. Mind control and propaganda. Throughout the story, we get memos written by workers at this company, as I had mentioned in Sean's story. This goes into the darker idea of they are losing their individuality and solely dedicating themselves to company jobs. The TV head signifies, at least to me, that everybody there is the same. People being fed propaganda, because usually TV is all about commercials and shows and whatever, and most people usually watch the same things. And you know, commercials are said to be propaganda sent by companies. They're drawing in certain customers and making you want to be a part of a food chain or be a part of a rewards club or something, right? So to me, this is just the AI mother getting into their heads, their TV heads, and controlling them by throwing propaganda of how good work is, and they are all just being controlled by a system. Okay, similar to this topic, I did not bring this up during the summary, but the book. There is a scene where Daniel is in his childhood home and he sees this book. This book is in his dad's office, and you need to grab that to escape this loop that you're in, right? Okay, so I'm very excited to bring up this book because the whole game just beautiful. Listen, if you're a nerd like me, an English person that reads books, you can instantly make the connection of this game and George Orwell's book 1984. What year does this game take place in? 1984. What number is on the book that is shown in the game? 1984. This whole game is a reference to George Orwell's book. And for those of you who do not know of the book 1984 or need like a little quick summary, I got you. Okay, so here's the little summary that I wrote about in my notes. Explores a world under a I can never pronounce that word, but a totalitarian regime that maintains absolute control through TV surveillance and a non-existence of personal privacy. It examines how the state can manipulate reality by restricting language, voice, and rewriting themes of history, forcing the public to accept a truth as a fact. Sounds a lot like real life, right? And the game? But yeah, so the story highlights a systematic destruction of individual thought and human connection, replacing personal loyalty with an enforced devotion to the state. A system can sustain itself by breaking human spirit and policing the minds of its citizens. Does that not just like just connects in your brain, right? Okay, so this whole game is like one big homage to it, you know? We got in George Orwell's book the Thought Police versus in this game we got the Thought Bureau. Come on guys, this thing is written like it. We got Big Brother in the book, but here we have Mother, and it's just a figure that is in control of everything. And I'm sure there's millions of other things that I could connect from this book to that game, but I don't want to waste too much time because I'm sure this video is already super long. So we can see in this little area of the game that Rachel's dad constantly takes from her, and the mom gives her stuff, but only after Rachel has done stuff for them, which is making them money. So they constantly invade her personal life. They take her diary, they take her job letters, and then there's a sequence where the player has to take hearts and give it to the parents. So the way that I understood this, Rachel's basically giving up her feelings and her emotions, and it shows that when she first meets Lucas, she's kind of hesitant to pursue a relationship with him because of what happened to her in her life. Okay, and the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the monster. I had to think a fat minute for this one because it was like, what does Lucas have to do with ever coming out in Sean's dream, and there's the face of Daniel inside of the thing, so it's like, what does all this mean? I don't know. My best interpretation of this is looking at it in a bigger picture sense, not just to each individual character. Daniel's being consumed by the corporation, right? As is Sean, and Lucas indirectly gets affected due to this. Lucas to me seems more of like a physical sense of destruction, and Sean applies to this too. Sean is both mental and physical, Lucas is physical, and Daniel is mental. So the way that I looked at it was Lucas wanted to give Rachel a better life, right? And her parents ended up killing him. So if Rachel never went to work for Leviathan, Lucas wouldn't have died. I can kind of relate Rachel's parents and Leviathan as one single entity because Leviathan doesn't want their pawns or their workers leaving them. In case of Sean messed up and they still gave him a job because they wanted to keep him there. Rachel, her parents wanted to keep her in their house. Once Rachel left and once Lucas wanted to take her, it's like a big no-no, like, do not leave us or you're gonna suffer the consequences. And then same thing with Sean. He literally loses a leg and does not get any remorse for it, but he still gets a job. A job that he can literally never take a day off of. So he paid the price for trying to cheat the system. So that's how I connected that. I'd be happy to hear anybody else's interpretations because the monster was just kind of tricky for me. So this game is beautiful, and as great as it is, some things either did go completely over my head or I was just confused. So Fred's character. He doesn't really come out much. He comes out at the beginning, comes out at the end. So he does betray the McLovins, right? He rats them out for having the two kids and hiding them. But in the game, he's apparently under McLovin's control. And for me, how the fuck? How did he get mind controlled by McGovern? You know, like, I think that Fred is set up to be like he's the AI genius, and then Professor McGovern is the one that works on like the science goop matter black substance thing. So I'm not really sure how he took over Fred's mind. So to me, that one was just something that I don't know if it went over my head. I just didn't understand. And there's not really an explanation for it either, at least not that I remembered. But I assume it's something like when he told Daniel that he made a virus to go into his brain and like destroy anything that was trying to take the secret from him. So maybe it's something like that, but again, that's not confirmed or anything. Another thing was Lisa's powers. So they say that Lisa and Daniel both get exposed to their dad's work. So how come Lisa was able to get powers but Daniel wasn't? It's not explained how she got her powers either, and it's just not talked about. My assumption is that there was a basement under their house that the dad was doing experiments on the animals with. So maybe the kids got in the basement, and you know, like there's a scene where Lisa is like, oh, dad's gonna get mad at us, and it's down in the basement, so it's probably something to do with that. But again, it's not fully clear, it's just an assumption. So this is my interpretation of the ending. So there's a few ways that I dissected this part of the game. So we know Daniel dies, right, to free his sister. We never get full closure on a handful of things in the game. So the bigger picture is Mother is still there and she's still working. There's 10 other scientists that were not mentioned at all from the Gold Rush group. And we don't really know for sure what happened to Lisa, because like there's that clip where she's just hanging and then she just disappears. But like, did she go to another world? Did she just disappear out of the building? Like, we don't know what happens to her. And we also don't really know what the limitations of Lisa's powers were. They said that her powers were limited because of Daniel, but now that Daniel's gone, what can she do? So to me, it's kind of giving a revenge arc, you know, like her whole family's gone, her dad, her brother's now gone. So like part 2? Yes, you could use this as a standalone game and be like, oh, Leviathan gets away with slaving away their workers, because that's kind of how reality is, you know, like everybody's working for a system, you know, and everybody works for the government. You need money to survive. But I would have to counter that with Lisa's disappearance, because she gonna just let everything slide that happened to her? I don't think so. And also, the whole game was about Mother wanting to get Lisa's powers. So now that Lisa just up and disappears, Mother doesn't have access to her. So do you think she's just gonna be like, oh, Lisa's gone, oh well? Like, no, I don't think that's how that's gonna work. But also, I am not a game developer and I did not make this game, so this is my interpretation, and that is, I think that it is being set up for a sequel. So closing statements, I am sure there's a million things that I skimmed through and probably missed that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't want to make this too long, and I'm sure it's already long when I start editing this. I'm so sorry. But thank you if you sat through this whole video. It was really fun for me to talk about. I like doing stuff like this, but I know it takes a lot of work to edit this type of video or just to set it up in general. I had to write 7 pages on Google Docs for this. But I hope if I find another game that I'm really passionate about like this one, I hope to share it with you guys, and if you guys liked it, I hope maybe you want some more. But I really love this game, and I hope you guys liked it too. I would love to hear your opinions or your view on this game as well. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!